How's it going, crypto community? Welcome back to part 2, sorry, of the three-way debate between yours truly, Peter Schiff, and Barry Silbert, right? This is more of a 2-on-1, but, I will try to find something that Barry is saying that is inaccurate. Maybe we can find something in this, I hope, just so that I can at least be like, oh, see, he did that. Just something. But at any rate, if you haven't already, I hope that you go back and watch part 1, right? Because the beginning was several things that were actually kind of interesting to point out, and that some people might not have at the forefront of their knowledge. And yeah, so I encourage you to go check out that part 1 first, and then come back and check out this one, right? So we're going to pick up right from where we left off, but first, if you're brand new, please hit that like, subscribe. Again, go check part 1, and then come back here. And then, after you've watched this series, hit that bell, because I'm sure that you're going to be hooked if you've enjoyed both parts and came back, right? So, without further ado, let's hop into this.
We did not grow up on a gold standard. We did not grow up during a time of war. So as that $68 trillion gets handed down, it is not going to stay in gold. Now, is it going to, whatever is in gold right now, is it all going to go into Bitcoin? No, of course not. But gold is an $8 trillion market cap asset class. Bitcoin's $100 billion. So a lot has to go right, or frankly, in Peter's view, a lot has to go wrong for an $8 trillion market class, asset class to double in price. At $100 billion for Bitcoin, it really does not take a lot for Bitcoin to outperform gold over the next 10 years.
So you think Bitcoin will outperform gold? And let's put this in perspective. Today, Bitcoin's trading.
Absolutely, absolutely. You think gold's gonna, or Bitcoin's gonna outperform gold? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Any of us should be like, yeah, absolutely. Look at how tiny this thing is. And we know what it is, right? We know what we're waiting for. Well, by and large, most of us know. I'm assuming most everybody out there is pretty competent, because there's a reason that you were attracted to this marketplace to some degree. You at least had your suspicions, right? Well, heads up, the house of cards is about to fall, and you are investing in the right space, right? The thing that I want to convey before we go on to is that while I am going to come at this as an XRP investor, as I did in the first one, I want to make clear that Bitcoin does have a future, right? And it's by and large because of everything Barry Silbert is saying. And what I'm adding is just my preface to why, yes, and see, this is a misnomer with the XRP, because we use a model that's far different, that may be debated by Bitcoin proof-of-work Puritans as to whether or not it is a truly decentralized network. But from all the research that I've done over the last year, I have the highest degree of confidence in my ability to confirm to you, my listener, that yes, XRP's ledger is, at least at the moment, decentralized, right? Especially more so than any other blockchain network. To the best of my knowledge, there may be something outside of the top 10 that's more decentralized, but you're also getting into lower market caps there that are harder to keep track of actually what down there is really good. It's kind of scary territory, right? So, without any more commentary from me, right, let's actually jump into this, because I'd like to keep this a little bit less than 30 minutes this time.
Trading at about $6,000.
Ads!
Gold's at about $12.80 per
Sorry.
ounce. Do you think gold will outperform Bitcoin in the long term, and what time frame?
In the long term, of course. I mean, almost everything is going to outperform Bitcoin. But in the short run, yeah. I mean, Barry's point is a bunch of young, inexperienced kids are going to be dumb enough to buy Bitcoin. Maybe they will. But as they get older, they're going to learn better.
This audience was they own Bitcoin.
Huh?
Half the people in this audience own Bitcoin.
Well, I doubt they have a substantial amount of it. Maybe they bought it like they would go into the casino here and buy some chips and gamble.
Okay.
See how like he doesn't even have to answer. He's grinning from ear to ear because Peter just damned himself, because I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one, right? Maybe I'm the only one that's investing in this and like really convinced that this is the thing, right? Like there's a reason we're all here and not in the traditional market or in any other thing, right? For us, cryptocurrencies is the thing. It's the future, right? People around us, a lot of times, you know, we know not to even really bring it up around most people because a lot of times they just look at you like you're crazy, even still, despite the massive degree of adoption we're seeing on the corporate scale. The fact that we're seeing high-profile individuals like Peter Schiff having to come out and publicly debate with people like Barry, who's primarily, you know, known for his contribution to cryptocurrency, to blockchain, right? So, at any rate, Peter just shot himself in the foot there, and that's why Barry doesn't even feel the need to respond. Let's just continue on, right? What is Peter going to say next?
But the air is already coming out of this bubble, right? The peak of the market was at 20,000,
Okay.
right? And so that was a blow-off speculative mania when they launched the Bitcoin futures and everything rised. So now we're in a bear market, and in a bear market, you always have rallies, right? That's what bear markets do. They try to sucker in the bulls, right? You have these false rallies. We're having one now. But
So, if you are a new viewer, I've shown my regulars a chart of the market emotions roller coaster, and I believe that is the video I did just prior to the first one of these. I believe it was kind of like a calm down kind of thing, but oh no, actually it was a shout out video to DM Logic, so go check out that shout out video to DM Logic and check out DM Logic's video. So this is a shout out of a shout out of a shout out video, right? I think I had one too many shout outs in there. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. So sorry, I find myself entertaining sometimes. I think it's a sign that I'm crazy. But you guys seem to like my ability to play both sides. So I'll continue doing it to the best of my degree. But it really is hard to find anything to disagree with in regards to what Barry's saying versus what Peter's saying. Sorry if that's upsetting to people that I'm not able to find anything that Barry's saying wrong. He's just not. It's just nothing that I see, right? If you do see anything that he says is wrong, please point it out, right? I don't want to be wrong. And I'll come back and revise this video if I'm wrong. I'll just like get rid of this one and I'll put the corrected video out where people have corrected me, right?
But, you know, initially, a lot of people got suckered into this pump and dump scheme because they heard all the stories about the young kids that took their bar mitzvah money and now they bought a Lambo, right? And everybody thinks they're going to get rich because they think these kids were geniuses when all they did is get lucky because they bought Bitcoin and then the price went up. But so there's a lot of stories out there about people who got rich because they got in. Well, pretty soon it's mostly going to be stories about people who lost their life savings because they put real money instead of play money into Bitcoin. And when you have the horror stories outnumber those, you know, positive stories, the brand is going to be tarnished. And I don't think you're going to have a bunch of young kids rushing to buy Bitcoin because they're going to know how much money their friends lost because they bought it.
Peter, what do you think?
Who's been buying gold over the past 5 years?
Not that many people. That's why it's still so cheap.
Okay.
Alright, so before Barry goes into his rebuttal here, right, let's keep in mind what he's trying to say. He's trying to say that we're in a suckers rally, right? He has no confidence in the fact that what we're seeing right now is a rally. He's saying exactly what people say at that moment. And note that Barry isn't denying him, right? He's not outright, he is very conservative about his view on the future of where crypto is going. So he's not euphoric, right? He's just confident, right? He knows what's going on. He's out there busting his butt to make sure what's going on is going to be a success, right? Because he's all in, right? Well, let's see how Barry responds to Peter.
Okay, but
You know who's buying it? The Indians. Central banks have been buying it. They still don't own nearly as much. They're not buying any Bitcoin, by the way, but they are buying gold because gold is money.
so let's talk about that for a second. So also in that tweet, you can see the demand from central banks over the past 9 years. Now, what's interesting is the most aggressive buyers of gold over the past 5 years have been central banks, namely Russia and China. And so, explain to me, Peter, this disconnect between Goldbug's view that central bankers don't know how to, from a monetary and fiscal policy decision-making perspective, don't know what they're doing, yet they're really smart in that they're buying lots of gold. Explain that disconnect.
Well, not all central bankers.
Obviously not everyone, right? But the ones that he's talking about that are responsible for this, right? Okay, I'm gonna stop. I really do respect Peter Schiff. That was disrespectful, but seriously, he's deflecting right now, right? This is typical deflecting, and what you saw after I unpaused and he continued talking, he had already postulated a question. Barry was formulating it, and Peter overwhelmed him and just kept going, right? That is also a dishonest tactic in debates, right? You got to watch for these things when people do these, especially in public on a platform, because that's how you find out who's being genuine and who's trying to, be a shill or a Schiff. Maybe we need to change the terminology, because at this point, Peter, you're showing all kinds of tell signs of somebody trying to sell us something, as opposed to, discuss the inherent benefits of technology, because that's what this is. It's technology, financial technology. It's about damn time. All right, what's going to happen now? Oh,
There were some dumb ones who sold, but look. Before the United States led the world off the gold standard, right? Gold was the reserve asset, right? When the dollar was the reserve currency, it was the reserve currency because it was redeemable in gold, payable to the bearer on demand in gold. In fact, I don't have the old Federal Reserve note, but I did bring. This is a United States note, courtesy of Mark Skousen, for $20 payable to the bearer on demand in gold, in gold dollars, right? But I think what foreign central banks are doing, the last time I was here at the SALT conference, I made a prediction. I said that if the Federal Reserve ever tried to normalize interest rates, they would fail. I said if they ever tried to shrink their balance sheet, they would have to abort the effort before they had any meaningful reduction. That has already happened. Now, when the Fed initially went to zero and launched QE, gold went to $1,900 an ounce in 2011. And the reason it did that was because people were correct, and they were worried about the negative consequences of what the Fed had done. But then the Fed was able to convince people that not only did its policy work, but that it could be reversed, that they could unwind it. Well, the Fed's about to go back to zero, and they're about to do another round of quantitative easing, QE4, that'll be bigger than 1, 2, and 3 combined. And when they do that, nobody is going to believe it's temporary. Nobody is going to believe the Fed has an exit strategy, right? This is just banana republic, debt monetization, and foreign central banks are preparing for a crisis of confidence in the fiat-based monetary system, in the dollar in particular, and so they need to act now to build up their reserves of gold so they have something real, so they have real money backing up their currency.
so here's what Peter doesn't get, and what he's trying to push. Everything that he said, aside from his plug of gold, is correct, right? He's a really good salesman. That's why he has, SchiffGold, right? He's a really good salesman. And he's a really good salesman who's good at pushing his point over on somebody who's just out there trying to spread the good news, right? And you can see that Barry's like, well, I've not been allowed to really present at all because of this dude that's overwhelmed the entirety of this debate. But it's okay, because he's sitting here saying these obscenely silly things to an audience that at least half of which is like aware of the nonsense that he's saying, right? So it's really kind of it's upsetting to see your heroes let you down, right? And Peter, You are many of our heroes because you led us on to that debt crisis you were literally just talking about. This is why we are so willing to welcome you with open arms despite your open rebellion against us, right? We get it. You're a libertarian. You want to rebel. Okay, cool. No offense to libertarians, right? I embrace many libertarian ideologies in my worldview. But, you know, I think a healthy dose of basically all systems, you know, everybody's got their points, and you should try and find the good points from each, and that's what we should use. That's my belief system, but not pushing my beliefs. Just wanted to, you know, say that, you know, we all know that Peter Schiff has everybody's best intention at heart, because he truly does believe that in the next collapse, the gold's going to go up, and it will. It absolutely will, right? It's like anybody out there that's like, oh, well, XRP is going to go to $1 billion and Bitcoin's going to zero. It's like, no. All these assets in the medium term, they're all going to go up because they're all safe havens from, you know, the collapse that we are now witnessing unfold in the stock market, right? It has this big rally, and the news is trying to make it seem like it's a big deal, but it's a bounce, right? Anybody that has been here for the bear market, actually anybody that's been holding XRP, you just felt a bounce yesterday, right? We had a bounce, and then we fell another, you know, we fell basically half as far as we fell the first time, and that landed us at 38 cents, right where I had informed you all before. I hope that you were all prepared for that when it did actually happen. You know, you were calm, but that's off this video, off this topic. But the point is that, you know, Peter is pretending that gold can be used as a global currency still in a marketplace that moves as fast as the global, you know, internet economy. And he's just, for whatever reason, parading around like, you know, we don't need to move beyond the tangible stores of value, that we need a conceptual store of value that is detached from as many things as possible, as much real things as possible, so that it can be a decentralized source of power. Because at the end of the day, money is power. It is social status. Status is power, right? So let's not make any qualms about the relationship of what money represents in society. And that's why I also encourage anybody that is deep in this thing for the long term, make sure that you are actively developing a plan for how you are going to handle your new status when these all play out, if you're patient enough for this to play out, and we are able to, as a community, follow the news and make decisions and adapt with the change if a change comes along that's devastating. You know, I'm not going to be somebody that, if XRP, you know, something happens with Ripple that I feel is actually damaging, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's just FUD. No. If it's real, we'll cover it. That's how I work. But let's get back into Peter and Barry. You know, again, look at Barry's face. We gotta feel bad for him as Peter's just sitting here going on a tirade about gold is the best. It's the first, therefore it's the last. But, you know, nothing ever lasts.
Rather than just some other piece of paper.
So,
On the flip
gold
side
is
of that,
essentially
on the flip side
a
of that,
hedge on the U.S. dollar weakening. It's essentially a bet on the U.S. dollar weakening.
well, Barry, let me
it's
ask
a
you
hedge
one
on
question.
all currencies weakening.
Okay.
It's real money.
Barry,
So
do you
it's gold is an investment, is basically an investment against the United States.
Gold's not an investment. Gold is money. Gold is not an alternative.
In what world is gold money?
It's in our world. Just because it's not being used readily, although you can, right? I mean, you said you can't walk into a coffee store. I have a gold account at Gold Money, and I can go in there and I can buy gold with a cup of coffee easier than you can do it with Bitcoin.
Okay.
In fact, my debit card. Here, another
I don't know if
product.
I've ever
Here,
seen anybody do it.
This is made of 24
Okay,
karat gold too.
Okay, you could
But-
pay. Okay.
Huh?
Well, but Barry, I do
But-
have a question for you. I mean,
Huh?
will we see central banks buy Bitcoin? Is that feasible? Will central banks start buying digital currency?
Sure, at some point, yeah, of course. Sure.
Sure or yes? I mean, why
yes,
would they?
absolutely, yeah.
They'll never
Yeah.
buy it. There's no way they do that. I mean,
Why would they? Why? I
You're
mean,
predicting
why?
central banks will never buy digital currency?
they're
That's
not
your
going to buy Bitcoin. I mean, look, is it possible?
Okay. So this is semantics, right? So, and this, the fact that Peter corrected himself, that is almost incriminating to me, right? I don't know about you, but he corrected. I just realized as I was about to start, I was like, wait, he just corrected himself and said Bitcoin instead of digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, whichever term he used. So not only did he just do that, and I'll leave that to your mind, but he's also making the assumption that, these that just threw me that they denied that that central banks would hold digital assets. Wow. Or that he just like reversed his position to Bitcoin instead of digital assets, because that to me says that he may actually already be an XRP. He may already know. So this may actually be him using the semantics of Bitcoin to create a smokescreen of sorts around this space, because he is somebody who would rather be able to load his bags off to the sides as best he can before the bull really comes. And he's just doing his best to hold it back, right? And when it comes, he's going to be like, oh, like he said, oh yeah, somebody gave me a little bit of Bitcoin once, but I just couldn't figure out how to sell it.
Possible that central banks may one day issue digital currencies? Sure. But and I disagree with Nero Bini. He said it will make monetary policy more effective. No, I think it'll make it even more destructive than it is now. I mean, anything that makes it easier for central banks to create money out of thin air, right, to create inflation and prop up governments and inflate asset bubbles is not a positive thing. But they might try.
But that's the thing, Barry, is that even in the case of Bitcoin, or not Barry, I'm sorry, Peter, even in the case of Bitcoin and XRP, both, right? Barry doesn't get the opportunity to reply here, even though he really wants to. But they both are stores of value because they're not inflationary and because a central monetary organization cannot control them. And due to their decentralized nature, they encourage the further decentralization of the network, which helps create a more stable and vibrant economy, right? A more vibrant, capital ecosystem, if you will.
But there's no way that they're going to buy Bitcoin or any one of these other, digital fiat currencies that have been created by, independent third parties.
As an investor, these are investors here. I think investors are hearing the gold argument and are hearing about the scenario where it performs well, things are kind of going not so well in the world. And I would argue, given that Bitcoin has all the same characteristics as gold, scarce, finite, portable, highly divisible, I think it has a lot more utility. Arguably, Bitcoin would perform well in that environment that Peter's describing.
Yeah,
but you know what? But let me finish. But Bitcoin, and more importantly, the community and the industry that is being built, the thousands of companies that have been launched over the past 5 years, the tens of thousands of jobs that have been created, the real innovation that's happening, I assure you, is going to propel the Bitcoin price higher, because it will generate real innovation in a world of economic growth where gold will only perform well if the shit hits the fan.
What is the fair value for Bitcoin?
And notice how Peter multiple times continues to try and interrupt Barry after he spent basically the whole of this interview being the dominant speaker, right? Like, Barry only spoke a few times, and so he just fell back on his laurels and spit some truth whenever he was given the opportunity to speak, right? I can't add commentary to most of Barry's stuff because it's just facts, and he says it better than I possibly could. The man's far more brilliant than me, right? So, and both of them are. It's just what Peter's doing is obvious to anybody who understands how debates are supposed to be done in a actually intellectually honest way, right? When a debate is performed honestly, a resolution is almost always, there's almost always a resolution brought up, right? Whereas dishonest always results in parties just going separate ways and nobody finding common ground even. And that's actually what's wrong with most of our governments in this world nowadays, in my personal opinion. But at least it seems that we're starting to see them all come to a consensus on crypto, right? So we'll be paying attention to that G20 meeting coming up that I'm hearing so much about, and I can't wait to hop into that. But we still have 8 minutes here with Peter Schiff and Barry Silbert, so let's see how they respond to the increase that will be coming, right?
And gold in each of your views.
Well, first of all, let me just make a point about what Barry said, and to finish the point that I made about gold not being, gold is not an investment like stocks or real estate. Gold is an alternative to the dollar, to the euro, to the yen. It's just a form of liquidity, right? It's not, you don't own gold. I mean, people are buying Bitcoin because they think it's going to go up. People are not necessarily buying gold because they think the price is going to go up. They're worried about inflation, the value of fiat currencies going down, and they want to have some liquidity, and they are holding it in real money. But what was the, I forget, what was the point that you just made that I wanted to...
Barry's just like, dude, what? You just went on this, you know, side rampage that's by and large FUD. It's just like, what? You literally just, like, I don't even know where to come at him from it, right? But like, so first off, there's the argument that Bitcoiners are investing in Bitcoin because they're convinced it's going to go up. Well, yeah, but that's only because we realize how early this is and how few people are actually involved in it. So we understand that as this ecosystem matures, it's going to grow rapidly. But here's the thing, those Bitcoin investors, as they spend more time investigating this thing, they're like, well, you know, Bitcoin's great and all, but like, you know, who else is out there? And they have an option. They either say they're all garbage, I'm going to be a Bitcoin maximalist forever, and cool, you have your shaders on, you're just pretending that number one's going to stay number one forever. That's the mentality of a losing team, because a winning team is one that looks around it and says, what are other people doing best? You know, Brad Kimes actually made a great point about this in his last stream from yesterday. So if you haven't watched Brad Kimes, go watch Brad. Go check out his stream from the day prior to today, or prior to today. It's the 6th right now, or the 4th right now, right? So not sure. I'm Central Time, Central Time, United States. So, anyways, let's hop back into this. Finish this up. But this is unfortunate to see Peter Schiff being so blatantly dishonest in ways that anybody who is even remotely familiar with cryptocurrencies at this point understands that this is just FUD. It's not true. And what he is saying that's true, he's choosing his words very carefully, I've noticed, right? He didn't say digital assets, he said Bitcoin and digital fiats, right? He specifically avoided saying cryptocurrencies or digital assets. He's choosing his words very carefully, and that really indicates to me that he is actually up there for Ripple. Or at least he holds XRP, right?
Oh yeah, Bitcoin doesn't have any of gold's properties. I mean, yes, Bitcoin tried to counterfeit some of the things that made gold good as money. The fact that it's divisible and portable and supposedly scarce and all these things that made gold better money than cattle or wheat or oil. But what Barry is overlooking is that gold never would have been money at all were it not for its value as a metal, as a commodity, as a luxury good that was desirable all over the world. If it wasn't for that, none of the other characteristics would have mattered. So simply trying to say, well, this is divisible and portable, it means nothing. What are you dividing? When I divide gold, when I have an ounce of gold and I divide it into 2 half ounces, each coin is a half an ounce of gold. If you take Bitcoin, you have nothing. If you divide it into 2 halves, you have half of nothing.
No, actually, Peter, if you take a Bitcoin, you have about whatever the market cap of Bitcoin is right now. I don't know. Is it 8,900? Is it around that range, somewhere in there? 8,700, whatever. About 8,000. Take half a Bitcoin, you have about 4,000. You know, stop acting like this doesn't have a real world value associated with it in the market right this moment, right? That is liquidity. That is the thing that you're saying that this thing doesn't have. It has liquidity, and it has better liquidity because, as Barry has pointed out continuously throughout this, Peter, its liquidity is superior because it has higher velocity, as in it moves parties faster, and therefore because it can be moved faster, it can be moved in smaller quantities, which also increases velocity within the network. Velocity helps increase your supply's liquidity. That is critical, and gold does not have that kind of potential, right? There's not that potential for velocity because it's a physical thing, and that physical thing, if you're going to move it from one organization to another, you have to put it in the back of a truck and send it off, right? Sorry, dude, you're wrong here, and you're sitting there lying to people because we've already pointed out that you're dancing around the reality that you know there are digital assets out there that are being adopted and they're about to take over the system. But you don't want to talk about them, you want to talk about Bitcoin.
So you're not dividing anything, you're not storing anything. When he says it's a store of value, you must have value in order to store. Bitcoin has no value today, there's nothing you can do with it, so it doesn't make sense to store it for the future because there'll be nothing you can do with it in the future either.
What do you think is the fair value for gold?
Well, I mean, gold, gold is, I guess, worth, you have to look at all the supply of dollars or euros or yen and try to equate it, but there's a long history of comparing gold to other commodities. And even like, a classic is a suit of clothes, right? This 1 ounce of gold that I have, what do I do with that coin?
It's right here.
But this would have bought a fine suit of clothes 100 years ago, and you could buy a suit today. And in fact, 2,000 years ago, you could buy a really nice Roman toga with an ounce of gold. But gold has real value. I mean, obviously, it's scarce, and it takes a lot of resources to find it and to mine it. But I think if you historically look at what gold is generally worth, you have a long history of prices in terms of gold. You can price the Dow in terms of gold, you can price real estate, you can price other commodities. You can go back over time and you can decide what is a fair price for gold relative to other commodities. I think gold right now, relative to most financial assets, is very cheap. I think relative to other commodities, it's very cheap. But I think what really makes gold undervalued is not just the supply of currencies that exist today, but the enormous increase. Because you've got all these central banks now that are down at zero. You've got a lot of interest rates that are negative. One of the knocks against gold used to be that it didn't pay any interest. I could put dollars or euros or yen in the bank and get interest. Well, now you can't. Well, zero interest is better than negative interest. And you have all these asset bubbles and all this government debt that needs to be inflated away. I mean, people should be buying gold a lot more now, and they will as soon as they comprehend the position that the central banks have placed themselves in. But I don't believe anybody is going to jump out of the frying pan into the fire by buying Bitcoin. I think you're going to see a crisis in the cryptocurrencies before you see a crisis in the sovereign fiat currencies.
Can you put a price on?
So, before she asks her next question of him, let's jump into that, right? So, he's saying that, crypto is going to have a crisis before fiat. Hey, guess what? 2017 happened, dude. 90% loss after peak? That's pretty substantial. And the market stayed pretty flat and actually seen a pretty steady gain, at least in regards to how crypto normally moves, ever since the start of this year, ever since its crash back in December, right? And XRP has maintained its trend line all the way back to April, May, somewhere in that time frame of 2017, right? It actually only ever corrected, I think, about, it's still held on to the net majority of all of its gains from its 2017 bull run, whereas Bitcoin actually got really close back down to its base, down there at 3,000 for a while. XRP never even got close back to less than a half a cent. Not even close. And that's because the entire time the bear market was going on, they were doling out their XRP to these institutional investors while assuring them that, don't worry, we can maintain the price. How did they do that? Most likely by investing that money that they bought from that they got from these bank exchanges to use to fund XRP's liquidity, to float its market capital, and to extract XRP from circulation as time has gone on, right? Which is exactly why I think we've seen such a dramatic increase over the bear market in the reserves of the largest accounts in the Ripple ledger, which you can actually see by going to the XRP ledger exposed, which just Google XRP ledger exposed and you'll find it, and you can go see all the dynamic statistics about XRP. Now, back on point here, Peter is really determined to drive home this narrative that central banks aren't going to use digital currencies. He actually slips a few times and says digital currencies, right? So we already know that they're adopting it. We already know that they're now purchasing XRP or exchanging XRP for whatever, under whatever agreements, from Ripple Labs, and they're going to use it for liquidity. That's they're in possession, right? So sorry, Peter, you somehow dropped the ball, because this video is this was from May 31st, and yet May 31st he's saying that institutions aren't going to adopt cryptocurrencies, and they've been onboarding them ever since October 2018 when Ripple Labs launched XRapid with 3 financial institutions on board day 1, right? Sorry, Peter. Facts don't line up with what you're saying. I like you because, once again, you inform me and many people that are listening to this about the financial crisis that we are all aware is about to happen, or most of us should be. And though many of us appreciate your insight, which is why we're willing to welcome you into our crypto community, you need to understand that what you're doing, for whatever purpose you're doing it, is going to cause extreme damage to your reputation once this market proves you wrong, right? So I'm going to just let this finish out, and we'll do some closing statements, because I'm certain that I've made this a little bit longer than I intended already.
And where you think gold will be?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, gold started this bull run. It was under $300 an ounce in 2000. And it got up to 1900, as I said, when people rightly concluded that what the Fed was doing was a mistake.
In 2011.
It's pulled back, right, to around 1250, 1300. I think this next leg is going to carry it to somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 when it breaks out of this congestion. But who knows? I mean, there is no ceiling to the price of gold because there's no floor. It's just a piece of paper.
Let's call it, 5x.
Okay, I don't know what just happened. Let's try that again. Sorry.
In 2011.
It's pulled back.
I think that was a
right,
technical difficulty, maybe.
1250, 1300. I think this next leg is going to carry it to somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 when it breaks out of this congestion. But who knows? I mean, there is no ceiling to the price of gold because there's no floor. It's just a piece of paper.
Let's call it, 5x.
That's so weird. Oh, anyways, but as he's trying to say, that just cut like that, so bizarre. Anyways, yeah, his prognosis is that this is, once again, that there's no value to these digital assets. There's no use case. He's just outright denying the liquidity inherent in these decentralized systems with a fixed supply, right? That's all that we really need as humans to agree on something being able to maintain its value, is that it has some degree of scarcity, right? Oops.
From where it is right now. So you're suggesting that an $8 trillion market asset class is going to grow to $40 trillion?
Well, if that's the math, I mean, that would probably still be relatively low compared to historically where it might be relative to the value of all the global bonds or all the global stocks.
So where does that demand come from? Where's the demand going to come from?
It's going to come from individuals, it's going to come from institutions, and it's going to come from central banks.
Dentistry.
No, I mean, there's always going to be demand for gold in dentistry and in aerospace and in consumer electronics and in medicine. And who knows, they may discover all sorts of uses for gold in the future that we don't even know about today. But that demand is going to be there. But I think gold is under-owned as an asset. If you look around the world at portfolio managers and how much gold they have exposure to, it's very little compared to historically what people used to own in gold. So I think there's a lot of potential for the gold market to mature as a lot of people lose confidence in central banks. I mean, it's amazing to me that after 2 big bubbles, people still have confidence in central banks. But this is the biggest bubble the Federal Reserve and the central banks have ever blown. And when this one pops, it's going to make the 2008 crisis look like a Sunday school picnic.
Before
and
we
I
run
think
out
by
of time,
then people will figure it out.
I want you to answer this question too, Barry, though. What is the fair value price of Bitcoin? I mean, we've seen it go to 20,000 at the end of 2017. Now we're about 6,000. I mean, is that where it should be trading? Answer that question. How much is this thing worth?
The fair value is where it's traded right now. I mean, the market's priced it where it is right now. But I think you have to think about the potential for Bitcoin really kind of in 2 different buckets. So as it captures a large portion of the $8 trillion gold market, make whatever assumption you want, 1%, 5%, 10%, 25%.
What is the assumption that you're making of how much of gold that Bitcoin can capture?
Oh, gold's gonna in my lifetime, gold is gonna completely lose its status as this mythical store of value investment.
It's not a myth. It's been storing value for thousands of years. You have to ignore that in order to, advance this Ponzi scheme.
So the other bucket that you have to look at is the value from the utility. Yeah. So the ability to provide banking services to the unbanked and the underbanked, 4 billion people, the ability to dramatically reduce the cost of remittance, the ability to transform the way our financial markets work.
That's all hype. None of that is true.
If it does all of that, and if it captures, a certain percentage of the gold market, I mean, what is the potential?
It's a lot higher than it was today.
Care to put a number on that?
Certainly not.
Most likely the market is peaked. The question is, how long does it take before it goes to zero?
Have you ever considered owning any Bitcoin or digital currencies?
Somebody gave me some once. I still have it. I tried to sell it. I couldn't figure out how to do it.
There's still time for you to join the winning team.
Huh?
You'll be welcome with open arms.
Look, I understand. Like, you got a lot of Bitcoin you need to sell. You need to create the demand. But, what I find is ironic, too, is that you knock how expensive it is to store gold, which is actually quite cheap. But then, you're charging 2% a year for people to buy your trust that owns the cryptocurrencies. I mean, that means you're guaranteed to lose 2% every year, right?
We have to wrap up. But do you own gold? Do you own gold or just Bitcoin? And
I don't know anybody who owns gold.
So just briefly, how much of your personal
portfolios?
How much of your personal portfolio do you have in Bitcoin, and how much do you have in gold?
Well, I have a lot more money in gold stocks at this point than I have in physical gold. But I have a lot of gold.
25% of your
No, I don't have 25. Not in physical gold. No.
Okay.
No,
but in gold stock.
Well, I have a lot of money in gold stocks right now, and I manage a gold fund.
Yeah.
Europe Pacific Gold Fund. Actually, I just got an award. I've got the #1 gold fund for the last 5 years and the last 3 years.
Congratulations, Barry. Do you know how much?
Oh, I'm all in.
All in Bitcoin.
All in crypto.
Well,
100%.
I mean, not specifically Bitcoin.
Okay, 100% crypto. All right.
Yeah, that's the other problem.
Well, that's all the time we have. I'm sorry. We could.
He's all in. Well, not Bitcoin, but the crypto market. And Peter's trying to freak out like, you're all in. What? You're all in this market? That's the issue. You can't be all in. It's just one thing. But he doesn't understand that this one thing is all things. It's the Internet of Things, ladies and gentlemen. We're in the Internet of Things. The Internet of Value is being pumped up so that the Internet of Things can be traded on top of it. And you are here at the dawn of the revolution. Peter Schiff, I'm sorry that you seem to have not been moved or dissuaded from your position, but you are entitled to it. We understand your skepticism. We understand your terror in regards to the global economy and how it is now at a point that seems to be of no return, right? So for that we can respect you, but we have to respectfully disagree with many things that you presented. Barry, great job in handling this debate. You really kept your cool. And to everybody out there that enjoyed this series with me, please make sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe if you haven't already, and definitely, since you're listening to my voice now, ring that bell so that you can be caught up to date every time I present a video, so that you can be on top of it I really appreciate your viewership, especially those of you who make it to the end of the video. That's why I'm giving you the shout out down here. It's going to add a few extra seconds, but you know, y'all are worth these few extra seconds, so thank you. And yeah, without further ado, I'll see all of you. My name's. See, I can't get my intro out right, guys. I'm doing this thing live, not doing any edits, and this is what I got for you. But I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for being patient with me as I learn how to do this better and better. And I really do accept all criticism down below, right? As long as it's constructive, please keep it kind. So, without any further ado, I've been Jade Martian, and I'll see you on Mars.